What's up, everybody? It's me, Stevie, Super Small Cheap Wolf, Super Small Grey Wolf. This is going on both channels, Cheapy Chat, Wolf Chat. And today we're going to be talking about the Sony PlayStation 6 being a handheld, Silent Hill F, and more. So let's get into this. So the first thing I would like to talk about is the Sony PlayStation 6 handheld. So, man, this is wonderful. Long story short, let's do some history-wise. You had, this is great. Back then, early 2000s, you had the Sony PSP, man. That gaming console was a rocket ship, man. Let me just tell you, man. Like, you could put it on the TV through a cable, which is, I'll get to that in a moment. You could put music on it, TV, shows. Just, that was the ultimate device. And nowadays, people do emulation stuff. But, hey, so yeah, back to the cable thing. You have a cable, and you put it on your console, your PSP, and you can put it on TV, and now you game on the TV, really cool. And I think they also had, no, that was the other console. But yeah, I think that was a Vita where you just do it digitally at that point. But yeah, I didn't have a Vita, don't get me wrong. The games, the exclusives, just didn't get to me. So yeah, I'll leave that to that. Now, long story short, when the Nintendo Switch 1 came out, I remember there was like a company, this was a big thing, I think it was like the first or second year of the Switch original, where an unknown company came at them like, oh, you copied our patent, our idea, you have a gaming console handheld that you could put on the TV and stuff like that through a dock. I always thought that was bullshit. If anyone's suing anyone, Sony should sue you, you know what I mean? Because basically, instead of a cable, you made a dock. You know what I mean? So yeah, there's that. And then nowadays you see a lot of handheld consoles that could be put on the TV. Well, I think there's like, besides Nintendo, Sony, other console companies, like two more have that idea of, handheld TV. Sony's going to be coming out with it, and, apparently, and then, Switch, of course. I feel like this is a wonderful idea. Because, and I feel like Nintendo should do this too. And I've talked about this in the past, where back then, when Nintendo and Sony, because they're similar, when they had handheld gaming consoles and home consoles, they dominated. They really did. You had the Sony PSP and the Nintendo Game Boys or 3DS, etc. Handhelds. You have many unique games which could only be played on a handheld gaming console. They have different mechanics and different things which feels natural to that handheld experience. And then home console wise, you had this, the PlayStation, whether it's PlayStation or Nintendo GameCube. At the time, I'll use that generation as an example, because the Nintendo GameCube, in the bottom they have screws and stuff where you could put a Game Boy player. And yeah, you could play your Game Boy games and Game Boy SP Advanced games on there. And same idea, you're playing your handheld games onto the TV, So that idea of, hey, handheld games onto the TV, in many different ways, it's been a thing, Super Nintendo, N64, GameCube, etc., and Sony's been doing it too. So I'm excited to see what's going to go, because I'm like, Sony tends to be really creative in many ways, but the PS5 does lack in exclusives, and unfortunately Nintendo's fallen under the same thing. I saw the last Direct remakes and remasters, one being Jamboree, and let me just say Mario Party Jamboree, and let me just say I love that game. It's a wonderful game, but where's the unique stuff? You know what I mean? So if this handheld that Sony plans to do for the PS6 is really going to come out and be something, wow, I hope Sony remembers what made their handheld games in the handheld consoles in the past really successful. Have like exclusives that feel like it's natural to the handheld experience, and have like give a reason for us to want to buy this. Because if it's just going to be PS5 ports and stuff like that, why even come out with this? You know what I mean? Just for the go? Which they do have. In fact, they do have a PS5 on the go, that handheld thing, which I thought it was going to be like unique games and all that. I think I talked about it at one point here, but man, that was a fail, man. That did not have any, I thought it was like, I never had a PS Vita, or back then. But let me just say, I remember hearing like a lot of cool shit about that. You know what I mean? It was hard to find. I didn't see it a lot. Like, I think I seen it, but not like a lot back then. You know what I mean? But to be fair, I was on the PS3 and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Oh, the PS4 at the time, yeah. So yeah, it was long story short, I hope Sony really, does some creativity. They create more unique games, they create more unique things as well. And yeah, I wish them the best. So next is Silent Hill F. Silent Hill F is coming out soon and I'm excited. This game is, from what I've seen, I didn't look into it a lot. I tried to avoid some of the trailers and stuff, but I did see like the original stuff, like the trailers and everything, because sometimes I noticed that a lot of game trailers tend to get into too much detail and kind of spoil stuff. So I was like, yeah, I'm good. You know what I mean? I think back then they did trailers a little bit cooler. But besides that, yeah, man, this game looks really cool. I think this is gonna be one of my favorite games of this year, and I feel like when it comes down to it, I think they did it good. From what I talked about horror games in the past and seeing this trailer so far, I feel like they're hitting it. Konami, you're doing really wonderful so far. So hopefully it lives up to the wonderfulness. I would say also, another thing is, is Silent Hill going to get an anime later on? Is it going to get a movie, live action anime? I'm interested. Imagine, like Konami, huge company and all that stuff. So thinking about it, I'm like, if this game really is like a wonderful success, which, hopefully it is, wonderful, and maybe Konami's going to venture around, maybe have like an anime, have like a movie, or have more games in the future. Maybe there's a sequel to this one, and this is like the main protagonist. Back then we had like, say, Harry's story told, and then, you had Hedda, you had, stuff like that. Like, this girl could be like the Jill Valentine, but for Silent Hill. You know what I mean? So we never know what's going to happen, So I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen. Konami wise, they've been weird at times, Metal Gear comes to mind, seeing how they've been handling that franchise and stuff. One of my favorites, but let me just say this, Metal Gear, that looks good. I'm going to get Delta, and yeah, I think Silent Hill F, I wish it the best. And let's see, what else? I feel like when it comes down to, modern gaming, I am happy to see that a lot of franchises are coming back, but it's unfortunate that like sometimes these forgotten franchises stay forgotten or doesn't get appreciation, you know what I mean? So seeing something like Silent Hill make a comeback, and it looks like, these creators respect the franchise, they're doing something great so far, it's really cool and interesting, not just like a blah, you know what I mean? So hopefully it isn't. And yeah, I just I'm excited and happy, happy to see Silent Hill come back. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is, when it comes down to it, I feel like a lot of times these, more on the topic of consoles, in general, like modern times, services and all of this, I feel like, when it comes down to it, Nintendo, $20 a year, you get a lot of stuff, you know what I mean? You get, the classic games, you get to play online. Hey man, my thing, I think there should be a separate thing where there should be like just to play online. Like, I don't want no free monthly games or anything like that. I just want to play my console, you know what I mean? Give it like a cheaper option or something like that, or make that free to play. The PS3 is still free to play, Sony, so we could do that for PS4 and 5 as well. That would be really cool, you know what I mean? So that's another thing that I wanted to talk about, but I didn't know where to fit it, so that's the and more part of the video. So with all that being that, I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Until next time, bye.